Thanks everybody. And welcome to the Muswell Hill Bookshop.
Did you choose that music?
I did. Very delighted to have somebody who's been my acquaintance for many years since I've been managing the bookshop, and also two people who've been my acquaintances for many years, in fact. So David, I know, will be familiar to all of you, and he's just brought out his biography, Volume 1. And Dr Jane Monson will be in conversation with him. So without further ado, let me introduce you to David Farrant and Dr Jane Monson.
Hello, I just want to clarify that I'm not a doctor of Wicca or the occult. I'm a doctor of French poetry, so it's strange where it leads to anyone here. I've known David for a long time, and he was in my very first creative writing group that I set up in London. I was trying to delve other aspects of his writing, and I succeeded to an extent. So there are various ways that I could conduct this interview, and we could have elaborated a bit more on kind of atmospheric lighting. I could have worn a garlic necklace. There are various things maybe you would expect, but although I really want to acknowledge David's involvement and knowledge and passion for Wicca and the occult and the supernatural, there are also many other aspects of David that I want to bring out in this interview, which come through in the book and through what I know about him. So he is a man of many different kinds of mysteries, and he's a very good writer. He's also a traveller, he's a lover, he's a father, he's a son, and yeah, these are the kind of parts of his life that I just want to kind of bring to light a bit. So obviously, David, you mentioned in your book, you know, the Wicca and vampires a lot.
Yeah.
So before I get into other aspects of the book, which are kind of related but unrelated, I just want you to maybe elaborate on your belief in Wicca and vampires.
Yeah. That's very important because it underlines, underlays over the whole book.
Mm-hmm. Can you hear David?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just do that.
Is that okay? Yeah. I only asked for this thing because I speak very softly, and I just don't restrain my voice. That's the truth. No, yeah, I think it's important about Wicca and even vampires to an extent, to just get the thing out of the way at the beginning. Because often Wicca, that is the true old religion as we see it, and I'm no longer involved in it, I haven't been since 1982, is nothing to do whatsoever, contrary to some reports in the press or what some people put around, nothing to do with Satanism, and it's nothing whatsoever to do with black magic. Full stop. And just to set the record straight, I have never been involved in Satanism, and I've never been involved in black magic. As I said, I was involved in Wicca, and to tell you really briefly, it's a religion based on the powers of nature. It's a religion based on the powers of human psyche, understanding consciousness, finding powers in the cosmos, powers in consciousness actually within ourselves. That is what Wicca is really all about. So when I refer to Wicca in the book, that's what I'm talking about. And as for vampires, again, I do not accept the existence of blood-sucking vampires. You know the type I mean, the type that stepped out of a Hammer horror movie, which can't cross running water, doesn't cast a reflection in a mirror, is repelled by holy water, the sign of the cross, and which can only be destroyed by being staked through the heart. I think that's absolute sheer and utter nonsense. I have never said I believed in vampires. the press might have got that impression, but in reality, I don't accept their existence. I do accept the existence of some entities, apparitions even, that can remain earthbound. For example, very quickly, there's the existence of the incubus and the succubus, which go back decades, centuries, and they're known all over the world. They are entities that allegedly visit. They do visit, because I've interviewed quite a few people who've had this experience, sleeping people at night, and they suddenly wake them up, and people find themselves absolutely paralysed and they cannot move. They're literally pinned to the bed. Now the symptoms from these visitations, I really won't be long,
No, it's okay.
are often, and the girl came to see me way back in 92, a German girl who was a victim, people become anemic. This particular girl, the doctor prescribed, he confirmed she was anemic and put her on iron tablets. There's a loss of appetite, and they are prone to bouts of sleepwalking and also vivid nightmares. And also there is a sexual element involved, but I'm not going to go into that here. The point is that when Bram Stoker came to write his vampire book, Dracula, I am quite convinced he was aware of all these symptoms that arise from visitations by the incubus and the succubus. But he took it a stage further, he commercialised it, and he turned these entities into blood-sucking vampires. So, if there's any cause for vampirism at all, it's probably the existence of those two entities, which are common worldwide. So that's what I would say about vampires.
Okay.
Now you carry on, sweetheart.
There will be an element of flirtation that goes on. All the time. Does when you come in the shop. But I'm interested in kind of creating a sort of narrative and a history as to what led to what people know about David now, or what you would gauge even from the cover of the book. And there's so much in a way in the book from his childhood that doesn't make sense in terms of your interest now, and yet does as well. And David's childhood and his teenage years at very, very kind of strict sort of public school, and running away from school, hitching around Spain and Europe. There are lots of aspects of his life where, and as they're represented in the book, they're thoroughly explored, but it's as though occasionally he does actually forget this interest in Wicca, and then he has to remind himself. And there's quite a lot
Listen,
of
I don't mind if you tell people I was expelled from 2 schools.
Okay, I wasn't
It's important, leave it out. It's true. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, sorry, okay, there are aspects of David will talk about what he's proud of.
I'm not proud of it, I just
You're not proud of it. But it's, anyway, so I want to kind of look a little bit at I want to sort of go through, not totally chronologically, but just sort of at least start with aspects of your childhood. There's a description, I want to read a description of his father, a description of his mother. And your childhood was fascinating. I mean, you were all sorts of things. One, that you were kind of Francis of Assisi with your relationship with kind of animals and birds. David knew Spike Milligan. Indeed, Spike Milligan gave him some mice, which he didn't have time, during the 50s, Spike Milligan didn't have time to look after these mice, so he gave them to David. And his father was very, very strict. He was in electrics, wasn't he? He was in electrics, some sort of program, radio.
Company director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his mother was a nurse. So there are lots of things in David's childhood that you just think, how did he get to these aspects? But so I don't know. So can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk a bit about Spike Milligan and these creatures that you loved? I mean, you were fanatic about.
father, you're right.
Helping
He
animals.
he was a very down to earth man.
Was he?
Very.
Oh.
I wouldn't say he was an atheist, but he didn't really believe in God or anything like that. Now, my mother was the complete opposite. She used to attend the spiritualist church. I believe there's one in Kentish Town. I was very young. And I can't go into too long a story, but I do know that her visits to the church involved her meeting churches, involved her meeting a lot of other similarly like-minded people. And it also resulted in her sometimes coming back very late at night. And even from a very young age, I remember, as a child, I remember my father and mother arguing because she'd come in too late at night. I was too young to understand at that stage, but that was the basic reason. She attended, as I said, the spiritualist church. And now I've forgotten your question. What did you ask me after that?
I was just interested about kind of your childhood influences and
Well, I was
it
in-
seems sort of that trying to kind of gauge a story about what led up to where your more recent.
I was undoubtedly influenced by my mother. My mother died when I was very young. I was only 13 actually.
Before you had kind of conversations with her that maybe influenced you, or had it happen?
I had when I was about 9, 10, 11, 12. Only small things, Jane. For example,
And everyone's.
I remember. Sorry, folks. Very quickly, I remember once I cut my finger, or scalded my finger at school, and they smothered it in butter, and they put plasters around it. I think they even put a bandage around that. And it was quite a bad burn. I was in excruciating pain. My father was at work. When I got home after school, my mother went mad. She ripped off the plaster, and she ripped off the bandage, and she washed all the butter off. And she said, hold your finger in cold water, just leave it there and hold it there as long as you can. And I did, and after about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, slightly painful, but it was all right, I could use a hand. And she said, you never treat burns like that. And you know, only years, well not years, maybe decades later, they discovered in their wisdom that the way to treat serious burns, people with serious burns, is to submerge them in tanks of cold water to accelerate the healing process. But she knew little things like that. Our first house was a Victorian house in Highgate, Shepperton. It was actually haunted. And it wasn't a very nice ghost that used to speak. Usually when my parents were out, and I'm sure the thing did it deliberately because I was in the house alone. I could never understand what it was saying. It was a distinct voice, although it was actually coming out of the wall. On 2 or 3 occasions, I glimpsed a figure in the corridors.
How old were you?
Oh, Jane, I couldn't have been more than about 7 or 8.
Okay.
And my mother told me, I told her about it. I told my father, and he said, don't talk such nonsense, you know, the ghosts don't exist. But my mother's attitude was, yes, there may be something here, but don't be frightened of it, because these things can't often harm you. They're just reflections, mostly of things that maybe happened in the past. And she gave me insight into unexplained phenomena, ghosts, which other people just didn't have. I think that's what started me off on my direction of looking into ghost cases.
Yeah, I think that well, you know, from what I know, that just the difference between